is really to bring finance guys together in a way we've never done before. So we have the capacity to make changes in schools. We can bring, I think, to the fore things like assisting principals make their decisions, helping people to get to a place where, or helping schools get to a place that maybe they thought they'd never be before. So in my heart of hearts, the principal is, as far as I'm concerned, God's anointed and appointed to run that place. Our job is to make them look good. Our job is to lift them up as best we can and do what we can and create a vital role in that space without interfering in their jobs, but bringing ideas, plans, thoughts that they may never have an opportunity to come across. Many principals aren't across every financial detail. They are, typically brought up as or born as educators, but we play another role. And in terms of giving them clarity, confidence around decision making, particularly for them to take to their boards as well. I think if we give them everything they need in order to make a decision, then that's our role. They have enough of a struggle getting through the daily stuff these days, and there's always a change in atmosphere at schools. Just a little bit of background. I want to just bring across the point that I think we have fun jobs. We have a really good time. I had a great time up in the Territory. So I was up in the Territory, and we had NT Christian schools operated a number of schools across the Territory. Territory is not very, it's a big place, but there aren't many people that live there. There's only like 250,000. And that's half the size of Ipswich. And you've got 125,000 maybe sitting in Darwin, another 25 in Palmerston, maybe another 20 down in Alice Springs. You've really got nearly close to 200,000, so where's the other 50? They spread all over the place. One of them is a little place called Gawa. So what do we do for Gawa kids? Well, Gawa is the top end of Elko Island. And those children are unlikely to get a job outside of working for the Sea Rangers. So in order to be able to work with them, or be able to get jobs for them, we decided that beside pens and pencils, we would also buy a boat. And so they could actually use that boat and go out. They do things like dugong counts, they do dengue mosquito monitoring, and various other patrols around the Westside Island. So they protect Northern Australia. And that's probably one of the most northern schools in Australia, to be honest. And NT Christian Schools also operates boarding schools. So, you've got kids coming in from all over the place, Daly River, Woody Cawood, Wadeye, Port Keats. And flight or travel in the Territory is pretty simple. Dry season, use a road. Wet season, you fly or you use a boat because you're not going to be driving on any of those roads. But you try and bring a child in for the census in August. When it is the dry season, billabongs are slowly becoming billabongs instead of just being flooded out, and they are out hunting and fishing. It is the best time of year. And when you try and tell a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old boy or girl that they now have to go to school, it is extremely hard. So here in town, we just expect everybody to arrive for census. It's easy, no problem at all. If you're running a remote boarding school, send a helicopter. So why am I talking about what we're doing with August census and why we think kids getting to school can be more difficult in other places? We're all different. We're all in different locations. So this is just a little story about Cyclone Monica that came through. That was in 2006, first year that I was there. Went up to Elko Island and couldn't find a tree taller than 3 to 4 meters. Everyone had been snapped off. It was a Cat 5, I think, that came through, or a Cat 4 at least. Then we had Cyclone Lam that came through. So just a little story in that space. There was a shed at the school, and the family got into, I don't know if you guys know, a Land Cruiser Troopies. It's the one that's got the people carrier. They went and sat inside the troopie, inside the shed, pulled the 2 roller doors down. The cyclone came through, the front door went off, and the troopie was bouncing up and down in the shed while the cyclone was taking place. So what I'm trying to say is you have different experiences in different places. And so it's one of the things we need to do was just send in airplanes. That's all we can do. Send in helicopters if you need to. But we had a turbine. One of the things we wanted to try and do was generate electricity. On a remote setting, you can't run cables all over the place, so wind turbine sounds pretty good. We were told that if a cyclone came up, there was an easy way to disconnect the propellers on it, and so it would work. Well, I'll tell you what, by the time that thing flew off, We reckon it was going that fast it could have lit up Sydney all on its own for 10 minutes. But there it is there. That's the calm before the storm. We had 2 holes in the ground. One was for their foundations before it blew away. The second was a big hole to put it all in after it blew away. All right, so today's about sharing stories. And all I can do is share the things that I've experienced within schools. And I will say to you, for example, when I first came down here, within a month of being here, I ended up going to a BGA conference on the Gold Coast, and I met Roger. And I'd looked at our financials, and Westside had a fair bit of money in the bank, and our student numbers had been growing, and I'd gone to Roger and I said, I think we've got too much money in the bank. And he looked at the financial and he went, yep, you're probably right. So I was able to go back to our principal at the end of the day, and I said to him, I told you we've got too much money in the bank. Now there's confirmation. Would you please phone Roger? Well, in 10 minutes he came back and he said, we've got too much money in the bank. I said, you're absolutely right. And it's those interactions that we can have that assist us be able to, I think, share the story of how we learn, how we grow, and in particular for ourselves here as a group. I'm just going to tell you about a few little things we've done. But there are people in this room that have had years and years of experience. People that could advise boards if necessary. Certainly we can create different ideas in people's mindsets that are effective if they've never thought of them before. Numbers always tell the story, and we have the capacity to make those numbers do exactly that. So I think, as far as I'm concerned, that we have a huge role to play in the bringing up of schools to a better place. And I think if we share our story amongst ourselves, that we can do that. And I think in particular, the first couple of years when I started off doing schools, it's hard because you've got no one to show you. You've got to learn, you make mistakes, etc., etc. So in my heart of hearts, I'd love to have, for example, maybe a panel of up to 10 guys who are really, really interested in helping other schools, who are qualified to help other schools, to be able to say, all right, you come on board, we'll help you. We'll help you plan a budget. We'll show you what student ratio should be, give you ideas on different aspects of the job, or just generally allow them to settle in comfortably, knowing that somebody's watching from a distance, not necessarily interfering, but just helping them come along. So, at the end of the day, I was saying over here that it would be lovely if people can leave today looking at stuff going, wow, I wouldn't mind trying that, and then having a contact number with whoever that person might be that could help them along the journey. So I think that's really important for us. So one of the things that we were struggling with at Westside, so I'm just going to go through a couple of things. If you don't know where Westside is, it's based in Goodna, right? So Goodna and Ipswich. So Ipswich is not typically known as your Gold Coast or Sunshine Coast metropolis. And Goodna in particular often makes the news for all the wrong reasons. It's one of the lowest socioeconomic areas you can find. And so anyway, that's where the school is, that's where we operate out of. And when I arrived, we only had 35% of our families paying by the second Friday. Typically, it was almost a case of we would accept any payment as long as by December, for example, people could have paid their fees and we'd still have the child on account. So one of my staff, whose children were at another school at the time, actually went and paid her fees and noticed that they got a discount. And so we tossed that around and we decided that we'd do something too. So we thought we'd do 50, try and make a big difference. We'd worked out how that might work, etc. And almost immediately, people noticed that there was, instead of using the stick to try and get people to make their payments, this changed the whole narrative. And so families who could pay naturally took advantage. It wasn't hard for them to think about that. New parents coming in, we started enforcing the thing that, listen, by Friday, by the second Friday, please make the payment, etc. And then people started to catch up. And it was incredible. So here's a few graphs around our debt balances. You can see in the last couple of years, our total debt balances have been reaching under $200,000 at the time. Well, now, before, they were well in excess of $1 million. So it's really, really, really changed the way we do things. Oops, something's got stuck. Sorry. Jeez. Thanks,
David. Very, very excitable press there. Maybe just use these ones if you need to, because I don't know what just happened then.
Okay.
Is this where we're up to?
Yeah,
or?
That's right. So now when we're looking at on-time payments, you're finding that we're sitting at around about 80%, which is awesome. So, and we're still having people coming forward. Even this last week, more and more families coming forward saying, can we increase our payments? We want to be able to, meet the deadlines properly. So here we got our credit balances. And so one of the things I said to the board was, well, if we make payments on time, sure, there's a cost because we're paying people, the $50, so how much would that be? And now we've got to a stage where I can guarantee you that by the second Friday of each term, we now have in excess of $1 million in cash sitting in our bank accounts. Look where we were just in 2016, 17, and 18. It's $200,000-$300,000 if we're lucky. So it has changed the way our parents think and see things. So it's formed our cash flow. We use the surplus cash to reduce balances. We also have redraw facilities on our loans. So let's say, for example, if you've got a $5 million loan, but you've got $2 million in cash lying surplus, we can pay that down and then slowly draw the money back as we need it. So last year alone, just using this process, we've saved $250,000 against budget. And that was even after we'd factored in the reduced percentages. So as a result of all of this, we've also taken the mindset of if we're being blessed, particularly with funding from governments, then we should be able to pass that funding on. So how can we bless others? And so what we've done is weekly payments. And the reason why we've done this is that typically, even if some of you may not know this, but the Commonwealth pays us 6 months in advance. They give us 6 months worth of money in January to take you to June. Typically, your state will give you 3 months in advance, so January for us is a great month. And the fact that if 80% of our parents are paying their fees by the second week of a term, we're in fact getting our funding up front. And so what we've decided to do is that we will make payment to to any creditors straight away. We don't worry about how big the invoice is. We're able to get reserves or invoices paid. For example, somebody might come in and do a roof and it might cost 30, 40, 50,000. If they present the invoice on the Thursday, it'll be paid on Friday morning. In Ipswich, that's good for us. As a business, people are saying, wow, loved working with the college because it's just so easy. They don't have to worry about cash flow or anything like that at all. So we get good prices and we have a great reputation. With our families that were struggling, we went and had a look at some of the balances and went back into history. And you could see in some cases, for example, that the debt might have been incurred 4 years ago. And prior to that, for example, it may have been well looked after, but it may not have been a debt at all. And so we've gone back and said, look, during this time of hardship, how about we just write that off? We'll get rid of that. Let's start afresh. So we haven't lost children. We've encouraged families to stay, which has been really, really positive. And of course, they weren't going to be able to pay, those funds during the time when they had a tough time. So we found that these families, in particular, become your greatest advocates. So when we had COVID, we went to the board and we said, look, there's a number of families which we can see, businesses shut down, they're not going to have an income to pay. So what we did is we basically said to those families, tell us your story. We went through the whole thing and we just simply didn't charge them fees for the terms that their businesses were closed. And you would not believe the thank yous we got from that space. But the board was prepared to do it. We never lost a child. We never lost the state income. We never lost the Commonwealth income. But we were prepared to stand by the families. I have already just mentioned that we are based in Goodna, and a number of houses very close to the school do get flooded, so they've accepted the new offer from the government for a purchase, and they're knocking down some of those houses now. But in 2016, we only had 926 kids. We've got 1,320 at the moment. So, that's an increase of nearly 400 children. And it's all these little bits and pieces that we've been doing that we believe are helping connect us with the community, talking about bringing the community into the school, but at the same time just showing that caring aspect that we have. And from that perspective, we feel like, and we know this, we're having fourth generation kids coming back to school. There are great-grandparents out there going, that is your school, that is where you're going to go to, and nobody bats an eyelid. It's where they want to be. We've always, though, had good, strong academic outcomes. Our teaching quality and presentation has always been high. Oh, that's just a little graph to let you see where we are now, the 1320. So we turned at 813 kids, I think, in 2014. Those were the years of the GFC leading up to that. And it was really, really tough. So I'm constantly reminded by board members, Cawood, it wasn't always this good. Just be careful. Just be careful when you talk about expanding, planning, going forward. The tough times really hurt us. We lost a lot of families at certain times, etc. So, so we're planning. So one of the ideas is always to make sure that when we do things, we do them in a way that we can move forward positively. So I want to tell you about an example of one of the things that was put into place. So the year before I arrived, we put 100 kilowatts on each roof. And so the idea was, have a look at the electricity bill, where can we save money? And so we did. And so the college invested around about $370,000, and they put these up, and it did significantly reduce our cost. It also significantly reduced our usage as well. Then we put in new lights, LED lights. I'll tell you, we had to do that because they were literally falling out of the ceiling. They were like 20, 25 years old. And you won't believe it, as soon as we changed that, our consumption dropped. It was amazing. That also cost us about $375,000, but we would have had to spend that money anyway. And then we went back to Iberdrola and we had this dream. We said, can you give us a zero electrical footprint? This was the plan. On a sunny day, show us what we need to do so that the college doesn't use electricity. And they came back and they said, put a larger setup, the 140 kVA on the secondary campus, and put the smaller one on the primary campus. And I can tell you that right now, between 8 and 3 on a sunny day, we don't use power. We use our own. And it's great. We'll show you the graphs in a second about how that works. At the moment, we've reduced our demand. We've improved efficiencies. We now have 1,056 panels on the roof. And can I tell you, they're pretty sturdy. We had a massive hailstorm come through the other day. Not one was broken, which is great. And we have begun exporting. So this little graph just shows you, I think I've done a 3%. The red line shows us where it diverges is in 2016 when we started. And I've just said a rough estimate of 3% usage. That's where the red line would take us. But have a look at where our actual is. Our actual has just plummeted. In the meantime, we have grown as a college in terms of buildings, because as you know, 400 extra kids, they need to go somewhere. So does this translate into a saving in dollars? And so if you have a look at the values in there, we believe we're saving. So the red line tells us, based on that consumption increase of only 3%, multiplied by the price of electricity. So they sell it per megawatt hour. So if you go on the internet, you will see Queensland, all the states are mentioned there. That's what our electricity bill would have done in red. And the gap that we have at the moment is the gap at the end of the graph over there. So in terms of, have we really saved money? Graphs can be quite tricky, but financials aren't. Straightforward. 2016, 2015, we had $146,000 worth of expenses, and I think just a little bit too far from that, 137. And then look where we are now. 86,000, 81,000, 84,000, 80,000, 112, and now 123. I need to tell you that in 2017 we locked our prices in for 5 years. Okay? Very clever decision. Let me tell you, it was just a lucky decision. They said to us, how about locking in your rates? And we went, oh, sure, why not? So thank you, Jesus, that we did. So my question really is, I don't have that to compare against. I can tell you where we were going and where we've ended up. But I don't know of another school that I can just walk in the door and say, listen, or pick up the phone and say, well, what's your electrical price? What's your cost of electricity? Is it 200? Is it 250? Is it 300? I don't know. But it would be great to be able to say, here's our example. That's our reality. You know, if you wanted to do it, a school's a big place. It's got lots of roofs. And so you could put up a fair amount of electricity. And my advice to anybody would be, don't put up a Mickey Mouse setup. Just go and do something decent, because it'll count. All right, so I told you that the 5-year plan was more luck than anything else. It sounded good at the time. And then our mechanic kicks in with, well, if you've got all this surplus power, oh, by the way, we run 20 buses. We run a fleet of buses. We do 350,000 kilometres a year. We bring kids in from outside. There's not enough kids in Goodna to be able to afford our fees, etc. Not that we're a high charging school, but it has always been. Westside opened with a combi as a transport vehicle. So with this, we went and had a look, and we found a company to give us two 25-seater buses, and they're working pretty well. They with everything that's new, there's always teething problems, etc. But these are them. That's the front view. And the little side view, I don't know if you can see, but the little back one over there says powered by the sun, S-O-N. And yes, Roger.
How much extra are they to buy though?
We paid $310 for those, and if I'd bought a 25-seater then, or a 24-seater back then, probably about $140. So we're saving, and I'll show you just now, but we're saving about $8,000 a year each in diesel. So we believe we'll get that back. And we put in the charger itself, so we actually charge them through our whole system, so that goes back to the main board. We've also just upgraded our maintenance vehicle to a BYD, so that's also electrical, and so that's not costing us much money at all from that perspective. So if power is up